Halloween's right around the corner, and designer Yaya 101 might have just released the coolest looking 3D printable file for this spooky season. And in today's video, I'm gonna be showing you how you can get it printed and assembled, and I'm warning you, it is not as easy as it looks. And this bone bag design is incredibly cool. The first time I saw it, I thought it was AI generated, and I don't believe it is. I think this is something that they've actually modeled and put a lot of thought into just because of how it actually functions and comes together. It is really impressive, and the best part is it should be able to fit on so many different 3D printers that are out there. And when it comes to printing these, there's only a handful of parts that you actually need to print. The biggest one being the main body for the bag, and then you have the bag handle and some clasps, and then you have the extra bones that you're gonna assemble together that are gonna allow you to open and close the bag. And unfortunately, all these parts are gonna require a good amount of supports when it comes to printing them. I'm using the organic support option that you can find in most slicers. You also wanna pay close attention to your top Z distance setting for your tree supports here. That's gonna make your life a lot easier when it comes to removing all these supports from your prints. And honestly, I should have done a little bit more testing on that with some of the different materials that I've been using, as well as the different settings that I've been testing out when printing these bone bags. Some of these supports are like welded on there. Ugh. Super stiff. And now we can get everything printed, and to do that, I'm gonna be printing these on the Elegoo Centauri Carbon, which Elegoo just so happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Not only is the Elegoo Centauri Carbon a fast and affordable Core XY 3D printer, but it also prints incredibly well. And that's thanks to Elegoo building out a bunch of these different print profiles that you can work with depending on the different materials that you're trying to print with. Elegoo also has a huge selection of different filament types that you can print with, including this glass-filled PETG. And if you haven't already heard, Elegoo's paying you for your 3D models. They've recently launched NextPrint, which is their online 3D file sharing website. And if you create an account and start uploading your 3D designs to the website, they'll pay you for each of these designs with their $1 million creator fund. And for more information about any of Elegoo's products or how you can get paid for your 3D models, you'll find links to those down below. After 14 hours, our first print finished, and it is looking pretty good. The texture of this glass-filled PETG just feels so good in your hands. It's got like an ever so slight texture to it, and it's just really sensational. Also, this turned out ridiculously clean. All right, let's try to take off some of these supports. You'll see one side came out perfectly, and on a second look here, I could see that in the middle there is one of the most difficult parts of this print that I thought I had supported well enough, but clearly I should have had a few extra supports there because it shifted ever so slightly mid-print. That sort of like floats there mid-print, which is what caused that little shift to happen. Getting to those supports on the inside of the rib cages is proving to be a little difficult. More time consuming than anything to try and get to all these. And all that effort removing those supports is well worth it, because check out these results. Now, when it comes to the materials that you might want to print this in, I initially, when looking at this, immediately thought this would be the perfect candidate for printing this in some TPU so that we have an actual flexible bag that we can work with. Unfortunately, this didn't quite go as planned, and here's why. All right, unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to stop this TPU print. I'm using Elegoo's Rapid TPU, and I decided to try and print it with the Rapid PLA settings, and it's printing crazy fast. I just adjusted the temperature slightly so it'd be hotter. Everything here, obviously it's stringing a lot, so that, I'm not too concerned about that. It's kind of a telltale sign of working with TPU. But everything was looking really good up until about here, where it started to, it looks like it's starting to clog and not print fully, and I can't have the bag obviously break apart on itself. So I think I'm gonna stop this and then reprint it, basically. Even if this printed properly here, the support removal with this was just so extreme. There's so many supports, and I can't remove the supports without basically ripping the actual print. So that's just something to consider. If you want to try printing it with TPU, you definitely can. you're just gonna have a whole heck of a hard time getting all of these individual supports off. Maybe if you have a multi-head 3D printer, that would make this whole process a little bit easier with this complicated design.
I just ripped the part in half.
One of the other larger complications that you're gonna have when trying to print this in TPU or a flexible material is that a lot of the components need to snap and stay together. And like this latch here is not going to clasp and lock together to allow these bones to interlock with each other. It's just gonna continually pop out as soon as you move them or adjust them. Or if you wanted to print the handle in TPU, that again is gonna flex more than likely too much, where it's gonna separate from the rest of your hard 3D print. With all that said, I did print this one. This is a high temp PLA. This is the glass-filled PETG, and then this is just the marble Elegoo PLA. So you'll notice here, this is a lot of stringing as well from this particular roll. I probably should have dried this before printing it, and so I've got a lot of string, but you can easily take care of that with a little heat. Now for this one, I did print this with a 0.6 nozzle on the Centauri Carbon. And this just allowed it to print a little bit faster and a little bit chunkier. And since it's in this marble filament here, you can't really see the layer lines too much. However, I neglected to adjust that Z offset for the support settings. And these supports are just being a real pain to remove. And after what might feel like a never-ending amount of removing supports and then grinding rough areas down until they're smooth, we can now finally get our bag assembled. And the first thing that we're gonna do is assemble this little hinged rib cage section. And all you're gonna do to do that is take the 3 individual rib cage pieces that you've printed. There should be 6 total. You're gonna take the largest that slots into the bottom of the mid-size version here, and you might have to do a little pressing to get that in, and it should snap into place like that. And then we can take the larger of the pieces and then slot that directly into the other 2. There we go. I had to put a good amount of pressure on that. And then this will allow this to hinge, open, and close for the top of the bag. And then both of these are just duplicate pieces of each other, and we should be able to take one of them and then slot that directly into the top of the bag. There we go. There's that one. I had to break them back apart from each other in order to get this in. There we go. Much easier. Then we have this cool opening and closing mechanism for the bag. Again, a little bit of effort, but well worth it in my opinion. Now, one of the trickiest parts of this whole build is inserting the clasps here onto the handle. I have printed and broken, again, so many of these. And I think the solution that I found that works the best for this is taking this little clasp piece that you can print, scaling it down on the X and the Z axis. So it still remains the same width here, but it's gonna be a little bit more narrow and then just tall. So it's gonna squish it a little bit for the little nub there. And it makes it a little bit easier to slide in and then not break the actual little hooks here. Even then, you still end up breaking. I literally just broke one, just trying to slot this in. Then for the handle, you place that on top and then take the little latches and then slot them through the openings, trying your best not to break anything that's holding it all together. Again, this is definitely not the easiest of projects to print and assemble. It looks like it would be such a straightforward thing, but unfortunately there are some really tight tolerances with some of the parts, so you're gonna have to really fine tune those as well as your settings for the materials that you're working for in order to get all of this to go together properly. It definitely is a little bit of trial and error, and don't be afraid to bust out the glue, the 3D gloop, or your Dremel and get to repairing some of the parts that you might have broken. And like I've said previously, this is not the easiest of projects to get printed and assembled and working properly, but I think the time and effort behind it is well worth it for the results that you're seeing here. This is such a unique project, especially for anybody that enjoys the Halloween season as much as I do, and you now have yourself a little bone bag that you can now carry around and put some goodies inside of it. And let me know in the comments if you think it's worth the effort of getting these fully printed and assembled. I also want to say a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support and me making videos just like this one here. But for me, it was well worth the effort getting these put together. I'm just loving how they look. Hey, thanks so much for watching, you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.